chronic illness is ultimately the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%. We've accepted that normal is 69% of our population is either obese or overweight. At this rate, by 2030, it means that approximately 70% of the population will be obese or overweight. Chronic stress creates chronic deficiencies. Chronic deficiencies create chronic symptoms create chronic illness. And that's like the big aha moment, I think, for a lot of people. The people that you admire, the people that you look at, the people you're like, man, they just don't stop. They just keep going. They seem to have an engine that never fails. They're no better than you. They're no stronger than you. They're no more gifted than you. All they've done is they've found their rhythm between overreaching and regeneration. When we have agency over our body, man, everything else falls into place.
Guys, help me welcome our good friend. Welcome back to the show, Justin Roethlingshoefer. What's up, man?
So great to be here. I love seeing you on the other side of the screen, Steven. Anytime that I get an opportunity to do this with you, whether it's virtual or in person, I'm just like,
That's right.
I'm there, I'm in, let's go.
Yeah, man, dude, I've been waiting to connect with you for a while. Our travel schedules have not aligned recently for us to hang out in person in a bit, but I want to kind of maybe start the show from a perspective of true ownership. I feel like a lot of folks, a lot of us, including myself at earliest stages, don't really focus a whole lot on truly owning our behaviors, our life, kind of our thought patterns, all of that. How is the power of ownership like really kind of shaped up kind of how you see life and how you now teach others?
So when I think about the word ownership, there's almost like there's two things that happen.
Yeah.
Either you hear the word ownership and you're like, ooh, I like that. That moves me. That like pulls me. Or you hear the word ownership and it repels you. You're like, ew, I don't want this. Ew, get it away from me. And we all know there's been a lot of influencers, a lot of people that have spoken about ownership over the past 5 years, that it really kind of has almost this toxic feel to it, where it's like, you have to be hard. You have to be in it. You have to be pushing. If you're not taking ownership, you're not worth anything.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do was actually change the thought process of what ownership actually means. Because when you think about the word ownership, I define it as the intersection point of accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
And so often we as humans, we want to push the responsibility off on somebody else. We want to push this out into a different place. And for me specifically, in the way in which I talk about it, it's with our health. It's taking ownership over our health. And the perfect example is the medical system. And we push ownership off on the medical system all the time. And people say, no, it's broken. The medical system's broken. I actually have a very contrarian viewpoint on that. And I don't think the medical system's broken at all. I think it's actually extremely strong because it's been built to do two things. One, fix things that are broken. If you have a bone sticking out of your body, you're probably going to want to go to the system. You're going to want to go to the medical system. If you've got an appendix that's about to burst, you're probably going to want to go into the system. You're probably going to go want to see your medical system. If you've been diagnosed with cancer, you're probably going to want to go to the medical system. And it's been built to make money. Those two things. And it does those two things really, really well. The downside is that we want it to be protective of our health, preventative of our health. But it wasn't built to do that. That's our job. But we've pushed the ownership and the responsibility off on everybody else instead of educating, equipping, and empowering ourselves with the information necessary, the wisdom necessary to take ownership of our health in a personalized way. So we no longer become reliant on a person, place, or thing, but we become this newfound understanding of what is happening inside this thing so that we can realize an outcome that's different.
Yeah, dude, I love that. In fact, in your new book, The Power of Ownership, one of the things I love about it is you come straight out of the gate and you're like, look, normal shouldn't be normal. We should be really searching for different. And I wanted you to break that down a little bit because I love the way in which you positioned it. And as I read it, I was like, ooh, I do this really well. Oh, I'm still living normal here. Oh, I'm living different here. And this is after, you and I being in a lot of the same circles and a lot of the same friends and like knowing everybody and everybody's doing different things. And, so for the audience, help them understand maybe what normal probably is for them now,
Yeah.
different could look like for them later.
So when you think about this dichotomy that exists between normal and different, the
Mm-hmm.
definition of normal is conforming to a standard, a
Mm-hmm.
typical, usual, expected
Mm-hmm.
state or condition.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what normal has gotten us in form of symptoms is it's normal to gain weight after you leave college and start your career. It's
Yeah.
normal to have your mind race at night before going to bed. It's normal to have brain fog and walk into a room while completely forgetting why you went in there in the first place. It's normal to be overwhelmed with worry and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal to wake up with no energy. It's normal to be too busy to want to even figure out anything with your body.
Yeah.
It's normal to work to the point of exhaustion. It's normal to
Yeah.
lack consistency. It's normal to lose control of your body. But we've accepted this stuff as normal. And these symptoms that we've accepted as normal ultimately leave us in this middle space, this middle continuum area, this no man's land that I call fake health,
Yeah.
which is disease free but symptom full. All those
Mm-hmm.
symptoms I just told you that we consider normal. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like to be 40. That's what it looks like to be 50. That's what it looks like to be a mom or dad. That's what it looks like to be a leader in the space in which you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But those symptoms ultimately lead to chronic illness.
Yeah.
And chronic illness is ultimately the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to give you a couple stats here that just really kind of, I think, open people's eyes to what we've accepted as normal. We've
Mm-hmm.
accepted it. We've accepted that normal is that 69% of our population is either obese or
Yep.
overweight.
Yep.
36% of this population is clinically obese. At this rate, by 2030, it means that approximately 70% of the population
Jeez.
will be obese
Mm.
or overweight,
Yeah.
increasing at a rate of 170% over the last 30
My
years.
guess is that drastically cuts down lifespan.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's normal. I go back to this. It's normal to see a 5-year downward trend in average lifespan of both
Hmm.
men and women. Men have hit an all-time low at 72 years of age as a average mortality rate.
Yeah.
Women, 77.
Yeah.
Like that is normal to us.
So
Type 2
why do we
diabetes.
accept it? Why do we accept that? Why are we not pushing back as a people group?
It's so you know what's unique about this is I've been asked this question time and time again is why are we accepting this? Why are these crazy stats of depression, of diabetes, of chronic illnesses like why are we accepting this? And to be honest with you, it's because we don't know.
Yeah.
We're uneducated, we're
Mhm.
unempowered, and when you don't have education, you don't have knowledge, you don't have wisdom,
Yeah.
you give away the power. You
Yeah.
give the
It's
power
interesting you
away.
say that because I think even, in the entrepreneurship space, which is where I spend a lot of time training entrepreneurs, um, I always I always can trace it back to people do dumb stuff because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
And they don't know any better because they've never been trained any different.
Yep.
Which is why I think your work is so important right now because you're one of literally a small handful of people who are trying to ring an alarm bell. I'm like, hey, there's a better way. There's a better way. There's a better way. You know? So shift it a little bit on what different could look like and why it's more valuable than settling for normal.
Yeah, when we think about what this looks like, and to be honest, why this is so important to me is I fell into this trap.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was in the health and wellness industry, even though I was running health, wellness, and performance, and in charge of the health, wellness, and performance of the best athletes in the world
Mm-hmm.
for over a decade in the NHL, I failed to run that same system for myself.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening was even though I looked the part, even though I was strong, even though I was still doing triathlons, even though I was still hitting world records in adventure races and all these things that I was competing in, all of a sudden at 31 years old, I started to have brain fog like I've never had before. I started to have energy issues I'd never had before. I started to have stomach issues that just wouldn't seem to go away. I went to all the doctors. They ran tests. They said, you're the healthiest person we come across
Mm-hmm.
in like a month.
Yeah.
And you're the person that like we would have you as a poster boy. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with you. But I was like, no, there is something wrong with me. You're not hearing me. You're not seeing me. I don't feel right. For over a year, Stephen, over a year, I was given supplement cocktails. I was given different protocols to follow. I was given different things that were all generalized, all generalized. Nothing specific to me, nothing specific to my body, nothing specific to all those tests that were run. And all of a sudden, I was in Chicago. I was in the team hotel working out. And I still remember I picked up a medicine ball after I was done. I turned, and all I remember is this room spinning. And I woke up in a bed face up. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't, like, there is something wrong. I was only able to eat soup and smoothies. Like, that's the only thing my body could actually feel without blowing up and just having a whole bunch of like stomach issues and headaches and all these things. I went to a specialist. They did a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. They found 4 polyps the size of my thumb, all precancerous in my colon, and they found an ulcer the size of a quarter in my stomach, also precancerous. Wow. And he said to me, he goes, Justin, if you had not continued to push, if you had not continued, like if you had not come in, you would not have seen your 35th birthday. And that's when I realized that, you know what? It's not the generalized approach. It's not the one blanket brushstroke that we are being marketed and bombarded in this country. It's the N of one solution. It's the personalization. It's the customization. It's knowing your body's data that ultimately drives the direction that you go. Because so many of us just want to make random decisions. We see what the influencer is doing. We see what the neighbor is doing. We see what the coworker is doing. We hear something on a podcast. And we're like, oh, I'll implement this. Yeah. But yet we don't know what that decision does for us. We don't know how that impacts our health. We don't know how that ultimately impacts our body, our unique makeup. Yeah. And yet we think that just the average general solution is enough. Yeah. And that is keeping your head in the sand. That is keeping your head down, going, oh, I'm taking action. It must be good. Yeah. Time for us to wake up. It's time for us to pull our head out. It's time to say, hey, what does my body need so that I can ultimately be very specific for that? And at that point, we can move forward. And there's 3 areas of personalization that I really talk to. Number 1 is your biometric information. We have to know HRV. We have to know sleep quality. We have to know VO2 max. Those are the 3 numbers that very simply, literally everybody listening to this podcast could go and have in the next 25 seconds. To get your VO2 max, take your max heart rate, divide it by your resting heart rate, and multiply it by 15.3. If you're a male and you're not above 45, that's a little alert system. If you're a female and you're not above 38, that's an alert system. Wow. We all have wearable devices, Apple Watches, Fitbits, Polars, Garmin's, Whoops, Auras. Yeah. If your HRV is not above 45, that's an alert. It's saying your body is under some type of stress. Sleep quality, if you are not getting 40 to 50% of your total sleep every single night in a quality stage, that is your body communicating something. Let the data drive the solution. Yeah. We then go into deficiencies. You can get your cellular testing done, understand where the deficiencies are, but then custom formulate supplementation, custom formulate nutrition choices to maximize and reverse deficiencies. If you're just on a diet or you're just taking supplements, thinking that it's going to help you, why are we not driving it back to something that's purposeful? And then for your habit structures, how do you live? What are you doing? What are your priorities? What season of life are you in? What are your day-to-day stressors? Yeah. We have to be able to personalize these things. And so this flywheel effect that as data drives it, it gets faster and faster and faster and faster because it gets more specific to you. Yeah. Wow. I was just thinking too, I didn't really start getting really clear on my overall health until I actually started doing DNA-based tests. Yeah. So, because I realized that I'm different from John down the street or Sally on the corner. Yep. While we might look like we're all humans, our DNA makeup itself, the deficiencies and the efficiencies are different. Yeah. I was surprised to find out that I had a couple of hereditary missing nutrients that could be supplemented largely. What are some of the things that you think people should do in order to get absolute clarity on where they are? Do you think they should do some of the DNA-based tests? Do you think they should just kind of manage those 3, manage and optimize those 3 areas?
I mean,
Yeah.
how would somebody get absolute clarity of kind of like, their where they really are to find baseline?
I say people always start with two things.
Okay.
And going back to kind of your DNA testing, I even say there's a layer deeper that gives us a deeper level of personalization. Because when you look at DNA testing,
Mm-hmm.
DNA testing is what you're genetically predisposed to. And you may not actually be realizing what you're predisposed to because of the way you've been living has
Yeah.
ultimately circumvented that. It's allowed you to actually overcome that in a powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
So you could get a certain DNA result, and there is no guided change as to what you need to do.
Yeah.
When we do cellular testing, so cellular micronutrient deficiency testing, understand at the cellular level
Mm-hmm.
what vitamins, minerals, and amino acids are missing from your cells,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in your blood. You could have high levels of vitamin A, high levels of vitamin B in your blood, but they're unable to get into the cell
Mm-hmm.
because there's some type of cofactor, some type of
Mm-hmm.
enzyme, some type of methylation sequence that isn't
Yeah.
working well.
Yeah.
And that's where we start to see the deficiency. So cellular micronutrient testing, that is where we have to start. That is where we have to truly understand, because if our body's starving for a vitamin, mineral, or amino acid, it's ultimately not allowing some process to happen.
Yeah.
And that's number one. Number one is cellular micronutrient testing. Have to get that done.
Yeah. Where do
Number
we get
two,
that done before we get to number two?
I mean, we'll run it right through Own It. OwnItTesting.com. That's literally why we
That's why I
have
wanted to
been,
bring it up, because I don't know that people know that Own It testing exists. And
yeah.
I'm a big supporter of that. So you guys are phenomenal at what you do. And again, there are different layers and different depths.
Yeah.
And again, the crazy part to me is realizing once you go through some of these tests that like some of the stuff is like super easy to correct if you just get on the right regimen.
Oh my gosh.
Like super easy.
Stephen, we've tested over the last, let's call it 3 months, tens of thousands of people. And when they come through and we get the retesting done, by simply custom compounding their supplementation. Like we don't prescribe supplementation. We actually custom compound something for you based upon your deficiencies so that this can now ultimately be reversed.
Yeah.
We have people come in with 10, 15, 20 deficiencies. Think about that for a second. A lot of these people have been taking vitamin D for years. A lot of them have been
Or a
taking
multivitamin, or trying to live well and jogging every day
exactly.
and working out all the time. And yeah.
Exactly. They've been doing all the things, but they're like, man, there's certain things that I talked about that we accept as normal
Yeah.
that I just don't think are normal anymore. I'm wanting more. And they come in and they find that they've got multiple deficiencies. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, those deficiencies are completely eradicated.
Mm-hmm.
And the symptoms that they were suffering from magically have disappeared. And it's only because your body's operating with exactly what it needs to operate with.
Yeah.
And that it is so,
which you cannot get
life-changing.
Yeah. And you can't, just so people understand this, you can't necessarily get this from food intake.
No.
These custom compounds that you're mentioning, are based on your cellular level, your cellular development of what your body specifically needs.
Yep.
As far as I know we've got a couple of good friends in the health and wellness space that have some great resources and testing as well. To the best of my knowledge, you guys are the only ones that custom compound anything. Everybody else, there is a blanket, okay, there's this deficiency, here's a blanket supplementation.
Yeah.
Whereas you're saying, well, yeah, but this supplementation needs a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. So we're going to put it in there for you.
Exactly. And let me kind of speak as to why.
Yeah.
Because let's say, for example, Stephen, you're deficient in your testing comes back and you're deficient in vitamin D. It's not as simple as going and taking a vitamin D supplement, which a lot of people believe that's the case. Oh, I'm deficient in vitamin D. Let me just
add
all
vitamin
of a sudden
D.
go add vitamin D. Well, what we actually don't realize is that to get vitamin D from the blood into the cell, we need high levels of vitamin K.
Mm-hmm.
We need high levels of calcium. We need certain cofactors and enzymes to break it down so it can be absorbed at the appropriate rate. And so you can go and have a great vitamin D supplement and take it, but it doesn't reverse your deficiency.
Because your body can't absorb it.
Exactly, because it's unusable, which is also why 99% of the supplement of the testing that's out there, whether you go to 10X, Inside
Hmm.
Tracker, Get Blokes, your medical
Yeah.
provider that are looking at the blood serum, they'll see that your vitamin D levels are adequate because you have it flowing through the blood. But at the cellular level, you can still be deficient because it's not getting from the
Yeah.
serum into the cell. And
Yeah.
that's like the big aha moment, I think, for a lot of people
Yeah.
is this testing that I've done isn't actually preventable. It's
Yeah.
not actually showing me what's actually going wrong because the testing you've been doing is showing you what's broken. And just because you're not broken yet doesn't mean that everything's right.
Yeah.
And so that is a big aha that we've just been hammering home. And you talk about these alarm bells that I want people
Yeah.
to hear is that what you've accepted as normal, even though all the testing you've done has said nothing's wrong,
Hmm.
doesn't mean everything's right. And we can actually go deeper to understand how do we make personalized and customized solutions and changes for you so
Yeah.
we can realize something different.
Mm. So this, I know this next question, I haven't seen it in the book, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. On that same concept about your body not being able to absorb things. My understanding is that the human body has consumed, and this is pretty much every person on the planet, enough of. I only know one way to kind of explain this. DuPont Teflon, essentially, like Teflon-like substances in your blood
Yeah.
that coat certain cells that prevent certain things from coming in. And my understanding is the only one of the few ways that you can correct that is with a supplement called resveratrol. Are you familiar with that, and do you have any thoughts on it?
So again, as a part of the cellular testing, what we actually start looking at is your antioxidant and anti-inflammatory capacity levels.
Okay.
So what you'll see in this test is you'll actually start to see a lot of things that people talk about where they're like, hey, what actually is a big antioxidant or anti-inflammatory capacity number for me? Meaning, we've heard many times acai berry, bilberry, boswellia, camu camu,
Hmm.
resveratrol, rhodiola, selenium, turmeric. We've heard of all of these compounds or all of these products that are like highly anti-inflammatory, right? Well, the crazy part is what's a high or a highly protective anti-inflammatory and antioxidant for me is not a highly antioxidant and highly anti-inflammatory product for you.
Wow.
So what happens is we get on these big kicks
Hmm.
where it's like, hey, resveratrol, a high antioxidant and a high detoxifying agent for, let's call it some random person, and they get a great result.
Yeah.
Wow, I need to use resveratrol. I have that same thing. Well, guess what? You could get the same detoxification effect by using cinnamon or chlorophyll
Wow.
or bilberry or lavender,
Hmm.
but it depends on who you are. And
Yeah.
so if you actually looked at my cellular testing,
Yeah.
and I'll pull it up here just for fun and giggles here. For me, highly antioxidant and anti-inflammatory compounds for me right now in the season of life that I'm in with what my body's makeup is looking at is mangosteen, moringa, elderberry, and grapeseed. Those
Wow.
are the highest anti-inflammatory and highest
That your body can absorb and consume.
that it can absorb and consume, but ultimately use as a
Hmm.
protective agent
Yeah.
against the toxins and
Yeah.
against a lot of these things. So as soon as, and this goes back to my example, I've been in a big training phase, right? I ran the Miami Marathon. I'm
Yep.
training for the Ironman coming
And you're
up.
traveling all over the place while doing all that stuff. Just putting it.
Correct. And
This
traveling.
dude is on a lot of stages.
And what I've started to notice was about 4 months ago that my body started to have aches that just like weren't there.
Yeah.
When I got my testing redone, I got those anti-inflammatory and antioxidant components put into my supplement.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, the body aches are gone.
Wow.
I'm recovering faster. I'm feeling better. I'm more mentally clear. The recovery time between
Yeah.
training sessions has improved.
Yeah.
All of these things that I was wondering what was happening is because our body continually adapts. Like, guys, please understand how powerful and how creative and how beautiful and how smart and how intelligent your body is. It adapts. It adapts to keep you alive.
Yeah.
But the constant adaptation means that we have to constantly adapt what we're putting into it.
Yeah.
And if we don't know what that is at the cellular level, if we don't know what that means for us, there's no way that we can ultimately keep up with it.
Yeah. Clearly, we all need to go get tested. I'm gonna have to get tested. I haven't tested the cellular level, so sign me up, send me a link. I'll take advantage of it for sure. I want to jump back into the power of ownership for just a second. There's a unique concept that when we go to actually put the show together and stuff like that, I'm gonna do my best to have a screen share if I can of it. But it's called the quadrants of finding your rhythm, or the quadrants. I'd like for you to break down each of the quadrants, why they're important, and kind of how we can leverage them for our peak performance.
Yeah. So when we think about the quadrant system, and I'll kind of give everybody a visual. So in the quadrant system, in the upper right-hand quadrant, or looking at the screen, the upper left-hand quadrant would be this overreaching phase, this overreaching quadrant. And this is where stress happens, stress and strain. And the world does an amazing job of keeping us there, because our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress, doesn't know the difference between positive or negative stress, doesn't know the difference between past, present, or future stress, and ultimately, or doesn't know the difference between real or perceived stress, has no clue the difference. And so if you're somebody who's building a business, if you're somebody who's raising a family, if you're somebody who's trying to lose weight, if you're somebody who's trying to be a mountain mover in this world, you're going to spend a whole lot of time in this upper left-hand quadrant, this overreaching quadrant. And a lot of people go, well, Justin, are you telling me you don't want me to be there? No, I need you to be there, because that's the only way that we grow. That's the only way you build resiliency. That's the only way that you ultimately build capacity.
Yeah.
But here's what we fail to do. We give away the power because we think we can just live here in marathon type status. But the longer we stay here, it drops us into the bottom left quadrant, which is burnout. And this burnout quadrant is where we feel hopeless. We feel overwhelmed. We have chronic anxiety. We stop sleeping well. We feel like there's no way out.
Now, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think this is an important piece. How much of the symptoms of burnout and all the things you just mentioned are largely tied to not being properly healthy at the cellular level? How much of that stuff can be eliminated just by understanding what you need?
I don't know. If I threw out a percentage, I'd be making it up. But a high percentage of a lot of what's going on happens there, because here's the system, here's the sequence. Chronic stress, which is in the upper left-hand quadrant, creates chronic deficiencies. Chronic deficiencies create chronic symptoms. Chronic symptoms create chronic illness. And so that sequence of where we're at ultimately creates that. So to answer your question, getting and eliminating a lot of those chronic deficiencies can ultimately circumvent this. But it's, again, a part of the equation, because the other thing we need to realize is that when we find a rhythm between overreaching and the bottom right-hand quadrant, which is regeneration, regeneration being our personalized habit structure, our exercise routines, our mindset routines, our hydration routines, our nutrition routines, our sleep routines, our morning and wake cycles, our sleep cycles, our travel frameworks. How do we recover appropriately? The environments we're in. All of these choices we make throughout the day, when we don't have a good rhythm between here, it keeps us in this burnout space, or it keeps us in this area where we feel, a lot of us have probably gone through this rhythm where we're like, I'm going to push, 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 I'm going to crash. And now I need a week or two to kind of retool, and I get back up here. Oh, now I can take on more. I can take on more. And I push and I push and I push and I push, and then I crash again. And we go through this cycle over and over and over again. So you haven't found a rhythm. The people that you admire, the people that you look at, the people you're like, man, they just don't stop. They just keep going. They seem to have an engine that never fails. They're no better than you. They're no stronger than you. They're no more gifted than you. All they've done is they've found their rhythm between overreaching and regeneration. And that does is it allows them to perform, play, and live in the upper right quadrant that I call ownership. That's when you're mentally clear. That's when you're energized. That's when you're focused. That's when you're able to ultimately realize potential.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting to me is getting people to play in ownership.
Yeah.
But you can't just be there by going and saying, "Oh, I'm going to do all these habits. I'm going to do all these things." It's no. What do you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
As you understand your data, you understand your body, and
Yeah.
you make educated, personalized choices based upon those things. And that's where life starts to get really fun.
This is why I love having you on the show. You're brilliant when it comes to this stuff, and people don't know enough about it. Before we get into the last segment here, I want to talk a little bit about where they can get the power of ownership, and maybe even find the DNA, or not the DNA, the cellular testing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the power of ownership, just go to thepowerofownershipbook.com. It's available for pre-order right now. Official launch date is April 23rd. So we're really getting excited for that. And
Yeah.
there's just been so many people who have just gotten behind this book, like
Yeah.
John Maxwell comparing it to Atomic Habits, in
Yeah.
terms of its impact,
Yeah.
and kind of like saying it's the next level. And
Out of
people like,
curiosity, are there a few bonuses for folks that pre-order?
yeah. So if you get onto the pre-order list and you get the book ordered, I'm going to be doing a couple live workshops that you get free access to just for those people who pre-order the book. I'm going to have early access to the vault, so PDF resources, video resources,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of frameworks that'll help you build out this information for you. Free access to a lot of wearable devices that you have to pay for before, which is actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you get in that area, and then obviously for bulk orders, there's a lot of really cool things we're doing in
Yeah.
that area as well. But yeah, it's. I'll tell this last story about like how I wrote this book and where it came to be, because it was on my heart,
Yeah.
and John Gordon
Yeah.
just
Mutual
really
friends.
encouraged me to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I wrote the book, I was 5 days out from my editing deadline with Wiley. And I went to bed. I finished the manuscript, put the final dot down, and I said to my wife, I said, "It's done. Amazing. 5 days to spare." I went to bed that night and I had a dream. And I just heard God say so loudly and clearly, "That's not the book that I told you to write."
Ooh.
And I woke up the next day and I was like, "Nah, not doing this."
That was tacos.
No, like that was just like indigestion. Like,
Yeah.
it's good. I'm done. I can't rewrite a book in 5 days. Like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
As the day went on, I had a little bit more conviction, and I was really quiet that whole day, and I didn't say anything to Elise. And I went to bed the next night, and I woke up at 2 a.m. The same conviction, the same word. That wasn't the book I told you to write.
Yeah.
And I got up, I printed the book off. We've got this 10 by 12 table in our kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and I put each chapter out and I started reading through each chapter. I started crossing things out. I started cutting. I started pasting. I started inserting new stories. It looked like a mad
Yeah.
scientist lair. It had
Yeah.
sticky notes everywhere.
Yeah.
And when Elise woke up in the morning, she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Don't open a door. Don't let the wind blow. Don't do anything, because if the papers go anywhere, I don't know where anything is."
Yeah.
And literally, Stephen, for 4 days, about 15 hours a day, I copied, I pasted, I cut it, cut it, I prayed, I leaned into this, and it just became a God download.
Yeah.
And with about 5 hours to spare, I finished, and I just started crying because I was like, "Man, this is so different than what I put
Yeah.
together in the first place.
Yeah.
This is so unique." And that's kind of how this book was. And so I'm just so excited to get into people's hands.
Bro, I've been very fortunate. I got a pre-release copy, obviously. And I thank you for your friendship and sending that across to me. It's a book that I think everybody should own. Especially when we teach a principle called the 8 pillars.
Yeah.
One of the pillars is your physical pillar, right? It's this shell you're in. And to me, you can't have peak performance in life and business unless you're at a peak state,
Yeah.
emotionally, physically, and spiritually, right? I know we share that belief, which is why I wanted to make sure that the audience heard this message, has access to the book, and now even has access to the testing.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer that most of us are living an unfulfilled life, again, because we don't know any better.
Yeah.
And so the best thing we can do, you and I, is just like, look, we're evangelists for this, and this is going to help you. Come hell or high water, this is going to help you. And I also love the fact that, almost that everything that you do is driven by your deep faith. And I know we share that in common. And I know because of that, we always expect great things to happen as a result of that. And the good things always happen as a result of that. I want to maybe spend this last few minutes because, we talked about the three different areas that we talked about. But I want to spend the last few minutes talking about the HRV and the importance of it, because it's something I've heard you passionately talk about before, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I first got really tied into HRV back in like 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody was studying it. Nobody was talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's what I ended up doing my postgraduate research in,
Mm-hmm.
what I really started diving into. And the unique part about what I found was that heart rate variability became this universal, all-inclusive, holistic number for us to understand how our body was adapting to stress and strain. If I put that into like layman's terms, it is the best number to understand how your holistic health and wellness is actually operating. Like, where are you at holistically? Because our body, I've mentioned this, doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, real, perceived, positive, negative, past, future, present stressors.
Mm-hmm.
And this now allows us to know, hey, how is your body adapting to the stress and strain? Are you spending too much time in this overreaching quadrant without touching the
Mm-hmm.
regeneration quadrant? Is your rhythm out of place? And if your rhythm is out of place, then I guarantee you that there's chronic stress, because I guarantee you there's chronic deficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
and I guarantee you there's chronic symptoms. And so what you're telling me is that you're just on a pathway or a journey to chronic illness, which it's not surprising that it is the leading cause of death in the United States. And so we have to take ownership to get ourselves off the bus of where we're going. And this is why it hasn't been solved yet, because we are expecting somebody else to do it for us. But no, friends, the ownership is on us. We have to take responsibility. And every single one of us have been created for a time such as this, which is why I believe this message has been created for a time such as this, so that we can ultimately be given something new, something different, that is not the norm, that is getting us a little bit uncomfortable because we have to learn something new. But when we have agency over our body, man, everything else falls into place.
Yeah. I mean, all these chronic dysfunctions too, like irritable bowel, okay, not having stomach issues, having what I think is a denutrified or unnutrified brain system.
Yeah.
Right. And this will be for men and women. This next one, it's a touchy subject, but as someone who's experienced peak performance related supplementation and kind of getting testing and kind of going through those different things. And I haven't done yours yet. I'm excited to now. There's a dysfunction that most people will call it kind of quietly, but they're called sexual dysfunction, can also be optimized as part of this. Your sleep's better, your intimacy's better, your wellness is better. You're able to operate at a peak performance state mentally, physically. When we start thinking about all of these different things, and especially, I love the fact you said that this is not the book that God asked me to write. What do you think the core message is that God was putting on your heart to share with the public?
It just makes me emotional thinking about it. It's like we've given away the power of the thing that we've been given. Like this thing that we're living in, man, you only get one.
Yeah.
You only get one. And it was his greatest creation. And we ultimately are doing what the world has told us to do.
Yeah.
We haven't actually leaned into what we are supposed to do. We have given up the control that he blessed us with. We've decided to turn a blind eye to this thing that is so unique to us. But yet there is a solution to give us the power back. There is a solution to give us agency. There is a solution to give us a semblance of control. So that we don't have to earn our illness, but rather we can earn our health as we step into a life that is also different. They talk like The Chosen says this so well, is get used to different. Well, guess what? A life following Jesus is different. A life understanding what a relationship with him is different. So is a life when you now understand your body, when you now understand this thing. When you choose different, you get different. And that's the power of it.
Let's go, dude. I could talk to you for days and weeks. That's why we're such good friends, man. I can't thank you enough for popping on the show, letting us know more about the book, and letting us know more about why you're so incredibly passionate about getting this message out to the marketplace, about giving us a conduit of choice, conduit of change, so we can all live different, dude. Thank you so much for calling the show, man.
So great to be here, Stephen. I can't wait till we get to see each other in person next.
Sounds good, buddy. Take care.
I hope you liked that video. And if you did, make sure you check out this next video right here.
80 to 90% of our behavior is actually unconscious. I mean, it's a crazy amount. And so you think about how many of us are making decisions with our business, our money, our body, our friendships, who we're dating. It's like this underground subconscious is guiding, and we're not even aware of it.